In this video, I'm spending 3 days on a secluded part of the Australian coastline, camped as a miner from the turn of the century. I want to find some historical ruins from lime miners who worked in this area from the late 1800s to early 1900s. I'll only be taking out food, camping gear and clothing that a miner from this era would have had on him. I also try to catch my food with traditional fishing gear used 100 years ago. And I discover more about the hidden secrets of an industry that has long since been reclaimed by the coastal wilderness.
Well, g'day everyone, welcome back to another video, and here I'm on a beautiful part of the Victorian coastline near Walkerville. I can see Wilson's Prom over there, and in this video I'm going to be camping like a miner from the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, because this area has some history with lime mining and historic lime kilns, and there's a few historical ruins here as well. Now this walk you can really only do it time it at low tide, so it was low tide an hour ago. Yeah, high tide, it gets really quite hard to do this walk, but check out this cave first and foremost. That is a ripper of a cave. I love this cave. Quite a few swallows live in here. Look at that. Fantastic, isn't it? All right, on my way. Tell you what, I'm carrying a few kilos on me. Traditional gear ain't lightweight, that's for sure. Ooh, I don't want to fall backwards. It's rough walking here. The rocks are sharp as. I'm not walking far on this trip, just a little bit down the coastline to a pretty secluded spot where I can set up a camp for 2 nights. And as you can see, I've got the chair frame pack from Peak Oil with me. It just means I can take quite a lot of gear with me. I want to make a really nice camp where I'm going. But I'm wearing a bit of wool on me because it's currently autumn coming to winter, cooler, but whew, today is a bit hot, I tell you that. All this becomes impassable at high tide. So once I'm at camp, I'm at camp. I love me a bit of beach walking. Now, I was almost tempted to go to the snow for this trip because a polar blast came through over the last 3 days and got a heap of snow in the high country, and the tracks are still open. They haven't closed the seasonal tracks yet, so I could have gotten really high up and got some good snow, but I've been planning this trip to this part of the coastline for quite a while now because I feel like my last couple of trips, or 4 or 5 trips, have all been trips of suffering to some degree, whether going cold, going hungry, pushing myself in heat. And so I wanted a nice cozy camp on the coastline with, you know, decent camping gear, decent food. I'm not going hungry, I'm not going cold, it's not a huge walk, and this weather that came in after this polar blast, I saw it was going to be this beautiful autumn weather, so I'm like, oh, I just want to hunker down by the coast and do some fishing and a nice cozy camp for 3 days, so that's what I'm doing. I love these sea caves, they're really cool. Have a look. Okay, I'm nearing where I'm gonna camp. So basically, on maybe tomorrow or the last day, I'll walk to the actual big lime kilns, the historic kilns you can visit. But where I'm camping is a bit down the coast, it's hard to get to. But this was also where a lime kiln was built into the cliffs. And there's remains of an old jetty as well that they used to load up the ships that came into this harbour. And yeah, there's a bit of history in this camp that I'm going to camp in tonight as well. So it's harder to get to, but I think it's going to make a really cool camp.
In the 1870s, limestone was discovered in the area around Walkerville, and by the 1880s 6 kilns had been built to turn the limestone into quicklime powder. By the 1890s, production was at its peak, employing up to 80 men to dig the lime, burn it in the kilns, and then load it onto ships bound for Melbourne, where a growing developing city had a hunger for mortar to supply the increasing buildings at the turn of the century. This was an incredibly isolated area at the time, and it still is quite a remote township. Although Waratah Bay is out of the westerly winds, it was still weather dependent. On bad weather, it could be hard for ships to dock, leaving workers often stuck there with the supplies they had on them.
All right, here it is. This is actually an old place where miners used to camp back in the day, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, time to take this pack off. Oh, she's a bit of weight in her. Let's check out these camp spots. I mean, this is a pretty nice one right here. You got a... Ooh. Oh, hello. Look at that one. Jeez, that's a cozy spot, isn't it? Well, this is my cozy little spot I've decided to choose. It's tucked away. It's not really right on the beach, but it just means I get out of the wind. And obviously people camp here. People have camped here quite a bit. Historically, this was probably a camp for diggers who mined the lime, but also burnt the lime in the kilns, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But basically, in this area, you're allowed to do self-sufficient dispersed camping. You've got to be respectful. I'm not sure about fires though. I've seen a few fireplaces, but just to make sure I'm in the right, I'm just doing the twig stove for this trip. I'm not going to be having a big fire, just to, you know, make it a little bit, be a bit more careful for a sensitive area. But I've got an old oilskin tarp I'm going to put up for this camp, and I've got a nice sleeping setup as well, because I want it to be really cozy and comfy for this camp. So, all right, time to get into it. Oh, and look at this. I brought something very special out with me. It was heavy, but I tell you what, I've been suffering the last few months with some real bad pain in my back and shoulders. Doesn't matter what I do, exercises, stretches, even massages, it just doesn't go away. I don't know if it's a pinched nerve, but sleeping on the ground does not help. So I'm getting off the ground for this trip, and I'm sleeping on a canvas cot. More or less this part's canvas. I don't know, that's probably not canvas there, but canvas cots were things that they would have had the old miners in rough camps. So I'm looking forward to sleeping on this one tonight with my sheepskin and my nice duck down cotton quilt. So all stuff that was around at the turn of the century, but nice and cozy for this camp and nice and warm. Check it out. That's where I'm sleeping tonight. Nice and warm, and I can actually have my twig stove right here, keep myself even warmer. So I'm happy with that. So to avoid creating unnecessary fire scars in the landscape, I'm doing a twig stove. I'm really enjoying the twig stoves for sustainable tile camping and low impact camping. I mean, not every camp you have to have a big fire on the ground. I just think it's responsible, especially as areas get more and more I guess, traffic and frequently visited, it's good to start considering these things. I actually got a little bit of a bigger twig stove. So this is actually a hot tent stove, but I didn't bring the whole chimney and the flue and everything like that. It's just going to be open for this camp. But this one's a little bit bigger, but I'll be able to use it. And that way I'm not, with the whole twig stove thing as well, you're not using as much firewood. You're just using a few little twigs and stuff like that. It doesn't cut into the landscape as much. I'm looking around, I'm seeing a lot of big logs are being cut off these banksia trees, so I really don't want to do that. I'd like to have low impact in this area as well. So yeah, anyway, let me get this thing set up. Okay, I think that's plenty to be able to cook on. Let's get this chair set up. And by far the best thing about this frame pack is the ability to do this. Getting nippy. I'm going to go for a little bit of a walk and show you some of the history, some of the artifacts in this area, historical ruins that tell a story about this place. Let's do it. Okay, I'm going for a little bit of a walk and there's a track here. Anyway, this track actually was cut back in the 1800s and yeah, it's kind of an old abandoned track and it leads to the only lime kiln that's in this area where I'm camping. Most of the lime kilns are back in Walkerville, but this one's a little bit hidden up the coast. And there it is, hidden amongst the banksia and in the sea cliffs is one of the remaining ruins of the lime kilns that was on this coast for the miners. Back then there was a fairly, decent township for the workers with a school and post office and things like that. But this one's a little bit further along the coast and it kind of just sits by itself, even though it has its own jetty. So there would have been a track that would have ran all the way to the township back in the day that workers could have walked to back and forth at the start of the day and the end of the day back to the, the township. And there was little shanty towns and shacks and things like that there. But this track, I actually followed this track on the last day and see if it takes me back to the Walkerville. But you can imagine here, it's a little bit further out. So perhaps, there was one or two workers that might have camped here overnight and set up tents down on the flats to kind of mine to kind of work the kilns and keep it burning throughout the night. It was quite tough work actually for the old fellas. So that's why I'm camping out here, and I really wanted to bring the kind of gear and the clothing that they would have worn back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Now, the quicklime was actually used as mortar in like building cements, plaster, and also in some cases for agricultural purposes for soil treatment. So for a growing Melbourne at the time, it was very, very much needed and useful, and that's where most of this quicklime was shipped off to Melbourne. Now, tomorrow I'll explain a little bit more about the process of how they made the quicklime powder. I want to show you some more historical ruins that remain here and explain about that. Okay, check this out. So this here is the remnants of an old jetty. Now, once the quicklime powder was done and it was burnt, it was loaded into bags and probably drawn down on horse-drawn carts. Now there was quite a large jetty down at the Walkerville Bay, but there obviously was a jetty here that they used to load up as well. And obviously at high tide they would have been able to get boats in. So this is all that remains today of the old jetty that was at this particular area. And the problem was, to get boats in here you really had to have calm weather. Like, it's calm weather now. The good thing about this bay is that it's protected from those strong southwesterly winds, but you know, it wasn't always good weather down here, especially in the winter months. You can imagine it'd be pretty bad weather. Hello? Beautiful little birdies. Alright, I'm going to collect some water in my little pot that I can boil up for some stew tonight from this little stream over here. Now, I just saw this before and I thought this was pretty cool. A remnant of the mining days. Check out this, I don't know what kind of metal that is that copper or something, but this old piping that catches the water and is dripping. It's not dripping very well, but that's actually really cool. That's probably how they got their water, drinking water back in the day. I'll go over to this one though, because I did notice it was flowing a bit better. There we go. Fresh water. I wonder if it tastes minerally. I'm a proper gentleman, aren't I? I reckon. It's cold. I'm gonna get a fire going. I'm just going to boil up some smoked meat. Get that cooked. To go with my meal, I have in here some ship's biscuits, and I made a whole video about ship's biscuits and how it was a staple for a lot of Europeans back in the day, all around the world, but also in this country. So I'll mix these in here. Couldn't think of a better spot to sit than here, looking out at Wilson's Prom and eating my food. And Wilson's Prom has a lot of history as well with early settlement, and I've done a whole video on the history of the prom before as well. I'll put a link up to that. But time to eat this food. But before I do, I've been told many a times that people do not like the sound of my lips smacking as I eat this food, so I'm going to start eating this, but let's cue the shot of me eating it from a bit further away.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day today. The sun is up. Glorious. And last night was such a cozy sleep in my bed, in my stretcher cot. It's nice just to have a good sleep for once while out here. And the stars were out in full force, like the Milky Way galaxy was out. It was absolutely beautiful, and I slept with my little stove right next to me. So I kind of just kept loading it up in the night until I fell asleep. I'm just enjoying this morning, nice and slow. But today I'm going to go for adventure. I'm going to show you some of the lime cuttings and explain a little bit more about the process of making quicklime powder. And I'm also going to go for a fish because I have an old school early 1900s vintage fishing rod that I want to try out. And I did buy some bait for this trip, so hopefully I might be able to catch something. We'll see how we go. So for breakfast, a bit of spam with cheese on it. Alright, so check it out. This here is an alpha reel. Now this was, these were made in production in the 1920s. It's Bakelite, and this is a cane rod. So I've used this cane rod before with what's called a center pin reel for trout fishing, but this is a side caster, so I can actually cast this out, and I'm going to use this with bait. And apparently Alpha and also Alvey, named after Charles Alvey, were the main reels in the 1900s, early reels that were made in Australia. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see that there, but it actually says, made in Australia there. And that's when you know it's old school, back when they actually manufactured stuff in this country. So anyway, I'm going to go for a walk to the point, and I've got I did buy some squid bait with me just because I wouldn't mind actually trying to catch a fish on this trip. And I'm going to give this a go and see how we go. What a glorious day. Absolutely beautiful, and probably aim for that point over there. I reckon that hopefully there's a bit of a deep water shelf off that. You can see how you really want to do this in low tide. These rocks have to be the most jagged rocks there are. There's a seal out there, he's just basking in the sun. That's really cool. And obviously before the miners of the late 1800s, this area has a lot of history in the late 1700s of sealers who would settle on these coasts, and they almost wiped out the seal populations, and thankfully the seal populations have come back. So it's great to see a seal out there today. This would be a bit precarious in the high tide, that's for sure. This is really cool. That's good as any to fish off here and off here. Alright, the idea with the side caster is it's like a handrail. You turn it to the side and it's going to let it loose. So let's wind that up. Hold here. Oh! Alright, we're on already. Oh, don't dive. Alright, well, that's dinner. Almost on the first cast. Look at that. That is a beautiful sweep. Look at that. That's dinner tonight. Absolutely amazing. I am pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I'm on. Oh, look at that. It's much littler. I'll let him go. Off he goes. Wrasse. Oh. Just, I caught a wrasse anyway. Well, successful fishing. I might head back because I don't want this tide to catch me. But I've got a little bit of bait left, but I might save that for this evening's fishing. But this was a ripper of a fishing spot, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I got some good dinner for tonight. I'm going to go for a bit of a walk. Well, the tide is down. Well, the tide's actually starting to come up now. So, and I saw a heap of really good driftwood. It's a bit of a walk down the beach, and you can't get there when the tide comes up. So, I'm going to go down there now and collect it because, yeah, this driftwood will be really good for fire tonight, and then I don't have to get this wet Banksia stuff because it burns really well. So I'm going to carry the chair frame pack, and this will be perfect to carry a bunch of wood. Alright, so up through here I found what looked like a bit of a track. There's these old stones that have been placed here at some point. I don't know what they could have been for, a ramp or something like that, but there's a track that goes up here to the lime cuttings, which I want to show you now. And here you can see where they've obviously cut into the side of the cliff. Oh yeah, have a look at it over there. You can see all that white lime. Now how it worked, the workers would cut the limestone out of the cliff. They'd bring it down to the kiln, so probably on a little track, maybe on a horse and buggy or something like that. They would have cut a fair track. And then they would have burnt it in the kiln for a few days, and that would turn the limestone into quicklime powder. And apparently it was back-breaking work, very hard work, and incredibly hot as well, because you're working many hours and you're working up close with the kiln. You could imagine the heat that it would have radiated out. So yeah, very hot work. You can imagine in the summer it wouldn't be nice, but maybe in the winter when it was a bit cooler it could have been a bit nice. But apparently quite a lot of damage was done to the woodland, to the cliffside and the woodland in this area as a result of it. And there have been a lot of conservation efforts over the last few years to get it back to a healthy level, and there's even a healthy koala population now in this area, which is really good to see. So yeah, they did a bit of damage, the old lime miners, but it's good to see everything kind of restored back to how it should be, because it is a beautiful part of the coastline and it definitely should be protected. I'm going to go check out the track that they cut and see where that heads up to. All right, so I'm just going for a little bit of a walk on this track that was cut back in the turn of the century. Just want to see where it goes, but it's a pretty cool track that they've cut. Might give me an easier way out tomorrow. I'll see where it goes. Interesting little track through the tea trees. I have a feeling this could have been the track or the road that led back to the little township of Walkerville South back in the day. And for the most part, most workers could have walked in and out each day, but there were definitely campings down on the flats where I am. But it's a decent little track here. Definitely get a horse and buggy down here back in the day. End of the line. Private property. Sheep farming. Look at that. Oh, look at that big skeleton there. Cow skull. Okay, well, it's private property, so I won't really be able to... I mean, you could probably walk through there. They wouldn't care too much, but I won't do it. I'll take the route along the coast or up along the top, but this is where the track leads to, so you can't really walk along this track back to Walkerville. Honestly, I think it looks good enough to go for a swim. Well, today's been a good day, and I did bring a beer out with me. Cooper's, established 1862, a heritage beer for a heritage camping trip. Ooh. Getting a bit nippy. Time to put this woolen overcoat on. And by the way, all the clothing that I'm wearing on this trip is based on the kind of clothing that workers, miners and that would have worn at the turn of the century. So leather boots, woolen pants, this is a linen shirt, a woolen overcoat, and you've seen my woolen jacket as well. That I wore last night and I'll put on later tonight as well, and obviously a nice felt hat as well. So lots of wool. The old timers used to wear lots of wool, but I don't know, I know it looks kind of stylish, but I actually think it's very practical. Like I love wearing this clothing now while out on camping trips. You might think, oh, that doesn't look comfortable, but it's very comfortable. And obviously I've been wearing the woolen puttees, which was quite common in the early 1900s as well. So look, I love it. I feel it breathes well, it keeps you warm. I'm a big fan of the old gear. Beautiful fish there. I'll cut her up into 3 parts, I reckon. And I'll be able to grill it. There's a lot of meat in that. Heaps of meat in that. Beautiful. Might actually start cooking.
But honestly, grilling it like this looks to be okay. It's not burning it. I mean, look at that. That there looks pretty good. Might chuck the fish head on. Oh, I got a bit of salt here. Let's try this. This looks actually amazing. Oh, it's cooked so well. That is, couldn't be happier. I don't doubt they caught plenty of fish here back in the day when the waters were teeming. That's a mighty fine fish head right there. Whoa. Best part of a fish, by the way, is the eyes. Now what I've done is that head, the remaining head, I've chucked it in there and I'll boil that up, and then basically I'll have a little broth that I can dip my ship's biscuit into, and that'll taste really nice because fish head makes a really good broth, nutrient broth, and that's a good dinner. As I sit here by the fire, I like to imagine what it was like for those men who worked down here well over 100 years ago. How was it different? How was the landscape different? Has it come back? Was it more barren from the work they were doing? What was the sea like? Was the sea abounding in fish? Was it lonely out here, down at the end of the world? I do love my history, and I do love trying to not just learn about the history, but put myself in situations and imagine what it could have been like. Even though by the early 1900s this town and lime mining operation was booming, come the 1940s it had all shut down and was described as a ghost town. Shipping was unreliable when harsh winter weather kicked in. The lime could often spoil in the damp coastal air, and the rising cost of transport all had a part to play. But cement also started to replace the quicklime, and as all naturally declining industries do, it held on for a while until it finally was just not profitable to run anymore. But now the landscape has taken back over. The coastal tea tree and banksia are free to spread. Where forests cut down and the smoke of fires used to be, the genuine calm and peacefulness now rests on the area, and local wildlife like koalas are starting to make a comeback. It's a fascinating bit of local history in a remote coastal bay down at the bottom of the world, where for a few years men came and worked hard to make their living. I'm not going to have a cook up for brekkie. I'm just going to have, I've got some jerky and the remainder of the cheese, which is a bit slimy. Otherwise I'm going to start packing up and walking back down the coastline. As always, when you come to places like this, make sure that you leave it nice and clean. I've seen a bit of rubbish around here and there, so you just really want to keep these areas yeah, nice and clean for the next people who come, and just respect where you are out in these beautiful places. I think I'm all for bringing lightweight stretcher cots out into the bush. It's not too heavy, this thing, so definitely a much more comfortable sleep than straight on the ground. But all right, I think that's everything. Oh, how heavy is this thing? Oh, pretty heavy. Not as heavy as it was when I came here though. A little bit lighter, so that's all right. Oh. Wow, it's a beautiful day. Now, it's not quite low enough yet to walk back along the coast, so I'm going to climb up the cliff and see if I can find a way across the top through the tea tree. Hopefully it's not too thick. I did have a little squiz up there yesterday, and from what I see, the ground is pretty clear. A lot of tea trees down, and looks like there's deer that move through there, so they've kind of kept it quite low, the shrubs. So I reckon that could be a better option. All right, up we go. And this is why a walking stick comes in handy when you're carrying a heavy pack like this. It just has the ability to give you a bit of extra support. And there's no way I can carry this fishing rod on my back, so I've tied it to the walking stick so it doesn't move around too much, but that way I can kind of, yeah, that works. So far it's not so bad, and this is what I expected. You know, you just gotta find a way between the tea trees, but for the most part there's walkable gaps. Oh, check out this. I've just stepped into a little oasis. It's amazing. Could have stepped on you. Alright, I've made it back to the part of the coastline where you can walk along it when it's high tide. But first things first, I need to make my way down there to the beach, and then just around there is where the car is. So this is the last final obstacle. I'm going to have to be very careful because it's quite steep, I'll tell you that, and slippery. Ooh. Jeez, I might have to go down on my bum here. This is precarious. I've got a lot of weight on me right now, so it's pushing me down, but I think that's the worst of it. Whoa. Honestly, I don't know if the walking along the coast was harder or easier. Made it. Alright guys, that's it for me. I'm right near the car now. I'm at the end of my journey, and I've really enjoyed this one, just learning about the lime miners on this coastline and camping like one of them. What a beautiful, beautiful place this is. Otherwise guys, that's it for this video. Make sure to like and leave a comment. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and plenty more educational videos on Australian history to come in the future. Thanks guys, have a good one.